You foster connection so that people can help you get through this
Mhm.
because you really find out who your people are when you're going through difficulty and it's
Yeah.
hard. That's almost, a period of mourning in itself is just realizing like all of the acquaintances that probably were social with quickly go away.
Mhm.
It screws into your own cell and then creates a biofilm around the cell that makes it really difficult to treat because that biofilm is almost impenetrable.
Mhm.
So it's really been a period of reinvention once again and making sure that yes, just because I am battling Lyme disease and, I'm getting a lot better. Even just the fact that I'm able to do this, speak on podcasts and be near all of this electricity. I used to have such a bad sensitivity to electricity. It's
Mm.
called an electromagnetic frequency sensitivity from my past that if I wasn't engaged in something that I was passionate about and that I really could put my heart into and have impact, that I was gonna, really go downhill quickly, and I
Mhm.
think that makes you sicker. So, throughout the hardest times in this journey, and I mean, I have stories that I could get into that are absolutely they're like sci-fi novels.
Mhm.
Um,
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using Newcalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Athena Brownson, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So, with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about all the amazing things you're doing in real estate and specifically what you're doing to kind of give back and educate people about Lyme disease and that kind of thing. So, thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure just starting to get to know you and chatting, and it's an honor to be here. I'm excited to share a little bit of my journey because it's been a crazy one.
You have quite a story, and I'm excited for our listeners to get a chance to share. So, where were you born?
So I was born here in Denver, Colorado, but at about 2 weeks old, I migrated up to Breckenridge, Colorado with my parents. They were successful ski bums, I'll say, at the time. So I grew up on the mountain. Breckenridge was, there are very few people that can say they were born and raised in a very small mountain community, but I learned how to ski when I learned how to walk, and that is Breckenridge for you.
So, Breckenridge is a ski town for people that don't know. There's a very famous ski lodge or ski resort there called Breckenridge, right? Um,
Indeed.
and it's sort of you ski in, ski out of a lot of the residences and that kind of thing. So I went there for the first time a few years ago with my
Oh, neat.
with my aunt who lived in Denver at the
Oh,
time.
neat.
Yeah, and we were actually considering moving to Denver. I had a job offer up there with a home builder of all
Yeah.
things. They wanted me to run their mortgage company up there. And we
Wow.
went up, and my wife is a warm weather girl. She's
Yeah.
not, she was born, and she's from Puerto Rico, right?
Okay.
So, you know, the whole idea of the cold weather thing was, and it snowed like a foot the first night
Oh,
we were there.
you got
So the next
lucky.
morning, so the next morning we're in the slush and the melting snow and stuff,
She's
trying to
like,
make our way
"No."
up to Breckenridge, right? And she just looked at me like, "We're not looking at houses. We're not moving here." Not going to happen, right?
That
We had a lot of
happens.
fun. We had a lot of fun up in Breckenridge,
Yeah.
messing around, doing the touristy thing and all that. It's a beautiful place. Most of Colorado is gorgeous. Breckenridge is one of the prettiest.
It's
So
gorgeous.
did you grow up in Breckenridge?
I did. So I was one of the few, in Summit County, which is the county that Breckenridge is in, along with like four other little towns. There was 300 people in my graduating class, so pretty small. But honestly, when I look back at, my childhood, I had a father that was a professional skier and a developer,
Mhm.
and a mother that was an artist and an interior designer. And I think as a kid, I never wanted to do what my parents did.
Yeah.
And looking back now, I am a spitting image of 50-50 of the two of them, and I wouldn't
Mhm.
trade it for anything because it was such a unique set of skills that I unintentionally, unknowingly picked up, almost just it just soaked in.
Yeah.
So
Osmosis, right?
exactly, osmosis.
That's what my kids are discovering. They're 24 and 26, and they're starting
Yeah,
to learn that growing up in a household where dad was in real estate the whole time, right?
yeah,
They learned a lot about credit. They learned a lot about, pardon me, mortgage finance, you know, real estate,
yeah.
law, right? I mean, kind of
And
scary what how much they learned.
growing up in Breckenridge, to be completely honest with you, I had such a negative connotation with the word realtor
Mhm.
because there were, as a Breckenridge resident, it was overrun by t-shirt shops for tourists, but there were more real estate offices than there were t-shirt shops.
Mhm.
And I just thought that it was a business of used car salesmen. I really, in terms of development, I have memories of just being freezing on job sites, like begging my dad to let us leave. And I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. And fast forward, a good 20 years, and I've been in real estate 10 years now, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah.
But what I did take from my father was his love for skiing. So my early years, I was following him, mainly around Europe because he was one of the psychos that went down the mountain as fast as he possibly could in a tuck. So he would wear a rubber suit. His helmet is actually featured in Dumb and Dumber when Harry's on the chairlift and has a very funny shark helmet on. That was my dad's because they filmed it in Breckenridge.
Mm.
So, he went 128 miles an hour on skis, and I followed in his footsteps. I started skiing, like I said, I think I was about 2.5. And I was a pretty proficient ski racer by the time I was like 10,
Mhm.
11 years old. I was already starting to travel all over Colorado, and then it started to become traveling around the country. And then at 15, I decided to go over to the dark side, which was the terrain park. So when you watch X Games, those crazy people going in the half pipe and going off the giant jumps, that was what I decided was going to be my sport.
Mm.
And it was very early on in the sport being available to women. Honestly, there were very few women in the industry, and by the time I was 15, I went pro. I got my first sponsor. They started paying for my travels, and then I started accumulating more sponsors. But what really, what I realize now, because I don't think we realize what life is teaching us
Mhm.
while it's happening. It's when we look back, we realize why we are the way we are, or what we learned, or, what what difficulties formed what in us. And when I look at my ski career, I had some of the most, elite level coaches in the world. And I traveled the world with them. I skied about 300 days a year and followed snow, all over North America and then over to Europe. And then when it became our summer, I'd go south of the hemisphere and hit Argentina and Chile and then New Zealand. So if I wasn't skiing, I was rehabbing an injury because
Mm.
as I'm sure you can imagine, it is a very injury prone sport.
Mhm.
But I always had coaches there to say, hey, if you do A, B, C, and D, you're going to get better. You're going to, I did 9 ACLs between the two of my two knees. So, and a couple broken necks, like no big deal. But I had these, coaches that I didn't realize at the time were instilling in me these beautiful life lessons. And I think a lot of sports, if you have a good coach, you learn more about life than you'll ever realize and that
Yeah.
you do in school at least. And I look at what they taught me and it was resilience and it was grit and it was accountability and discipline. And, there was always a repercussion for my actions. So if I didn't show up when I said I was going to show up, then I was likely going to be doing burpees or hiking or whatever it may be. And so it really instilled in me like the best business school that I probably and life school that I could probably have ever asked for.
It's kind of like life at another level. In
Exactly.
fact,
And
I think that might be the title of your book,
boom,
Life at
thank
Another
you.
Level,
Life
right?
in it because I was in the air.
Right, right.
That's
I'm kind of
amazing.
digging this, right?
You know, I've been brainstorming and I think you just hit it. So I'm gonna have to thank you in the foreword.
There you go. I'm all about it. So growing up in Breckenridge, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
So my favorite thing, honestly, when I look at my youth was the fact that I was almost at all times within about 5 to 15 minutes away from the bottom of the ski
Yeah.
run because I was so passionate about it that I mean even my school was set up so that every day at 10:30 a.m. I was finished with my core classes and I got to go skiing.
Yeah.
So it which counted as my health credits and my PE credits. Um and having that ability to create like a tribe, have this strong camaraderie with my teammates and be outside, being active, moving my body. I realize now that that probably saved me from getting in a lot of trouble because a lot of the people that I grew up with were not in the same boat and did end up getting in a lot of trouble. So
Wow.
it kept me motivated and it really taught me at a very young age the idea of your why and becoming so passionate about your why that you'll dedicate everything you have to it. And of course, I didn't realize that at the time, but it's something that I'm eternally grateful for. And I still tell my coaches that because at the time, I just thought they were sociopaths that wanted to torture us. They
Some
weren't.
people are
They
just
just,
cruel.
yeah, exactly. They just cared. We just didn't realize it.
That's awesome. So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Oh, that's such a great question. You know, initially, the first thought that came to my head was my dad, but I think honestly, one of my head ski coach who I trained under for a solid 12 years and I
Mhm.
traveled the world with, he was the most difficult person on me. Like he was extremely regimented, very type A. I'm ADHD all over the place, like shiny objects. But he taught me, I admired him so much and because of the discipline that he portrayed, because of if he said he was going to be somewhere at a certain time, he was going to be there at a certain time. He was reliable. And honestly, I think that he created the foundation of who I am today. So I think that's the most influential person and that at least in that chapter of my life, because I think that mentorship is one of the most beautiful, you know, people don't take advantage of mentors enough, and I think it's one of the most pivotal parts of my life and in helping me to succeed or get through difficult times. So in that part of my life, that was definitely my greatest inspiration and the person I looked up to the most.
It's kind of one thing that we talk about a lot as a thread on
Yeah.
this podcast is mentoring and paying it forward.
Amen.
If you look at anybody who succeeded at a very high level, they've had a number of mentors that have come in and out of their lives. And those were people who were accomplished at what they were doing, right? And they didn't necessarily
100%.
have time to stop and help us, but they
Yeah.
took the time to stop and help us. And I feel like it's incredibly important that the message that we get across to people is if you can help somebody, even if you
Yes.
don't have the time, in honor of the people who have helped you in the past, like your
Give.
grandparents, right? Yeah. Just stop.
Yeah.
Just stop and give back, right? Um,
And it
you
ends
know,
up being more rewarding than you can
yeah,
ever imagine because
yeah,
when, the mentors that I've had gave me so much um life, and they really they believed in me, and they let me follow every move that they made. They let me, sit in on phone calls and listen in on strategy meetings. I mean, I would not be where I am today without a doubt if I did not have incredible mentors and coaches. So when I get the opportunity to mentor, even on, the smallest level, whether it's like someone that's going to be following me for a year, or whether I just get bursts of being able to give, my expertise and kind of train and teach someone, when you're giving knowledge or you're giving, your anecdotes almost, I find that I end up learning more about that scenario in my own life, or learning more about what I'm saying than I knew prior. So
yeah.
it's something that gives back as well. But I think we have to operate under the mentality of giving and not expecting anything in return, because honestly, that's how you form really authentic connections as well.
Yeah. And it's a big, big part of our society going forward.
Yeah,
It's a big
we
part. And
need
I
it.
know, and I know I'm sounding idealistic and all that kind of thing, but
Mhm.
I just need people to hear me, right?
Yeah,
That that there are people out there that sometimes don't know they need your help,
yeah.
okay? And oftentimes will not have the gumption to approach you about it. I had somebody call me the other day and they said, "Hey, I want to pick your brain." And I said, "Well, it won't take long."
You
You
should have
know,
said, "Get a shovel, there's a
no, I
lot
just told him, I'm
there."
like, it won't take long. It's slim pickings. Okay. We're down to 3 brain cells and you're welcome to them. Okay.
I can relate.
You
Real
know,
estate does that.
right. It's been a long journey, right? But the fact of the matter is this: you're never going to get anywhere if you don't ask,
Yeah,
right? And the worst they can say is no. And what they'll probably end up doing is they'll probably end up doing it, or they'll end up sharing with you somebody who would, or somebody who'd be a
yeah,
better fit, or somebody who'd be willing, right? That kind of thing. I just want people to understand that mentorship is a big deal, and it's a bigger
huge.
deal today than it's ever been, simply because with social media and all the things going on, we don't connect the way we used to. And I shared with you that I'm
Yeah,
writing a book on the power of questions. And
yeah,
the whole idea behind it is being able to connect with people, right? Being able to engage them and connect with them on a level that's a deeper level than anybody else can connect. And that's all about moving us forward as a society, moving us forward as a people. And
it's
I
so
feel like it's
true.
incredibly important that we talk about it. So we're going to take a break real quick. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the amazing things you're doing in terms of giving back to society. Speaking of which, right? with the public speaking you're doing, and also talk about some of the amazing things you're doing in real estate. We'll be back in just a second. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com, and it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Commercial break, commercial break, commercial break. And we're back. We're with Athena Brownson. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk with you about the rest of your life, right? So we've talked about,
Yes.
so let me ask you this. In high school, did you have a favorite subject?
My favorite subject was skiing. Honestly, I
Mine was
did
recess,
not.
so I get
Yeah.
it.
That was my health and PE credits, like I said, and I had a one-track mind that I wanted to be a professional skier, and because my school supported me being able to be on the mountain, that was my favorite subject.
That's cool. So after high school, where did you go?
So I took about a year and a half off. I was, still traveling pretty much full time. And then I started going to call. I had gotten a lot of college credits done in high school, honestly. And when I went to CU Boulder. So you said, your son loves Boulder. I loved Boulder as well. And I'd do summer semesters there and then fall semester, and I'd still ski through the winter. So I got my bachelor's degree. And I honestly, when I was about halfway through sophomore year is when I needed to retire from skiing. And that was because my coach, or no, not my coach, he was pretty much a coach. My doctor, my knee doctor at the time had done 9 knee surgeries on me, and we had a very good relationship, and he looked at me and he said, Athena, you're going to need a knee replacement before you're 25 if you keep at this. And that was when it kind of hit me that it was time to hang up the skis, so to speak. So I really went through this identity crisis sophomore year of not really knowing who I was outside of the sport, because I always identified so strongly with I was a skier. Everything I did was, for skiing, and my friends were skiers my entire life. So I went through this very, interesting, hard period of kind of reinvention and trying to figure out who Athena was. And granted, I don't know that any college student really has the depths of understanding who they are at that point, but I began seeking that. And I realized that I watched my mom throughout my life do the interior design in my dad's properties that he developed. So he ended up developing most of Breckenridge. So if you've seen, Peak 7, Peak 8, a lot of Main Street, like he built for the last 40 years in Breckenridge, and very well. And my mom did all the interior design for his projects, and she was also an artist. And I knew that I didn't have any artistic abilities whatsoever, but that I loved art, and I loved art history, and I loved architecture, and I couldn't get enough of learning about the history of civilization through art and architecture. So I ended up getting a degree in art history and interior design. And then I had a minor in peace and conflict studies, which really focused on large scale negotiations. And, none of these things I realized at the time were intentional to go into the world of real estate. Yet they were all tools that would set the foundation for a very bright future in real estate. So I finished up my bachelor's degree in, got my degrees, checked that box, I would say. Still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had a great job offer at an interior design firm that worked between Vail, Breckenridge, and Denver. So I was commuting all over the place, and I I stuck it out for almost 2 years, but I pretty quickly realized that coming from being an athlete, being someone that, however, I was in charge of my success because if I showed up and put the work in, then I was going to get the output that I wanted.
Right.
And I realized that when I was working 9 to 5 for someone else, and I was kind of stuck in a creative box that had very, strict limitations,
Mhm.
it really was not, it wasn't me, and I needed to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what that looked like.
Mhm.
And I have, still my best girlfriend. She sells about 100 million a year in Bozeman, Montana, by herself with 3 kids. She's a superwoman, but
Mhm.
she had just started in real estate, and she sat down with me and she said, "Athena, I know you haven't had a great idea about real estate, but you love architecture, you love people. Like I'm very much a people person. You love design. Like, why do you not at least look at real estate?"
Mhm.
And she said, "Look, meet with my mentor, the owner of our company, see what you think, and if you hate it after that, then at least you know that you can check that off the list."
Mhm.
But I scheduled lunch with her mentor, the owner of the company, a couple days later, actually. And I remember sitting down and immediately just being entranced with this human sunshine. I mean, he taught me in such a short period of time over lunch the difference between transactional business and relational business,
Mhm.
and the impact and the relationships that you can create through this industry, and the fact that you can help people through one of the biggest investments, whether it's buying or selling, of their life. It's a huge milestone, and it's
Mhm.
it's an emotional roller coaster, and people
Right.
need, trusted advisors, and, those agents that I thought were used car salesmen do very transactional business, and that is a part of the industry. And we have the opportunity to make a different name for the world of real estate by giving someone an experience that lasts far beyond the closing table. And needless to say, like, I'm a very impulsive. If I decide something, it's going to happen immediately.
Mhm.
So I quit my job the next day. And it was actually while I was rehabbing my last knee surgery. And I needed just a cleanup after everything that had happened to it. And I got my real estate license while I was recovering from that. And the gentleman, John Stegner, who I sat down with over lunch, ended up being my mentor for the first year or so. And he kind of still is. I'm not even at the same company, but I have breakfast with him, once every other month. And if I ever need advice, I still call him. And I think that's another beautiful thing about
Mhm.
mentorship is you create this very authentic, vulnerable, safe space with someone that you respect and you trust, and you value their opinions and their expertise. So it's someone that you can continue to come back to. But I followed every move he made for this first year.
Right.
And that honestly is I give that the key to my success. It
Mhm.
it taught me everything that I needed to know.
That's cool. That's really cool. I have a
Special.
story for you about your current CEO.
Oh, Robert?
Yeah.
I love
So
that guy.
so we lost a very, very good friend of mine
Sorry to hear
to
that.
cancer at a very early age.
Ugh,
And she was with Compass at the time. This is a
really?
couple years ago.
Yeah.
And she had 2 babies at home, and she was a real estate investor and and an agent, and just an amazing person, absolutely amazing
Yeah.
person. And I was looking at a property for an investor, and there was the reason the wholesaler sent it to me was I have purchased a lot of real estate for investors in San Diego County
Yeah.
over the last number of years, hundreds.
Yeah.
And so they called me and they said, "Hey, we're currently in escrow with another investor, one of your competitors, and it doesn't look like they're going to close. And so can you come take a look at this, because we'd kind of like to, replace your offer with theirs,
Yeah.
right?" And so I went down, took a look, and I didn't ask who the investor was. I didn't it didn't
Yeah.
occur to me. I just didn't, right?
You
And
don't
so
wouldn't.
yeah, so I went down, took a look at the property, put my offer in, and they said, "Hey, we just found out that they're absolutely not going to close on this, so the property's yours." It turned out it was her. She was the one who had the offer in on the property, and
No way.
she died that night.
Oh.
And so that's
Yeah.
how they knew that it wasn't going to close, because she passed away
That
before
is
the escrow closed,
heartbreaking.
right?
Oh my
So,
goodness.
yeah. So just absolutely, I thought she was getting better. She had been battling cancer for a number of years, and I thought she was, improving, and she took a turn for the worse, and she was gone. Just, it felt like
So
that, like
quick.
that. And so I had this overwhelming need to do something. I needed to do something to support her and support those
Yeah.
babies, and I needed to help, right?
Yeah.
So I started making calls. I'm like, what's going on? What are we doing? Right? And they put together a GoFundMe page,
Mhm.
GoFundMe account for the kids, and so in honor of her. And so I started calling all the people that I knew, and I've got 6,000 people in my database. So I was dialing for dollars, right? And I was calling
That's
everybody in the
amazing.
investment business, because we all knew her and we all loved her.
Yeah.
Some people loved her more than others, but everybody loved her, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm calling, I'm drumming up support, and then Robert Redfkin just pops in my head, and I'm thinking, okay, I need to reach out to Robert. So I reach out to Robert
Mhm.
on his cell phone,
Yeah.
and he answers me back. I texted him, and he answers me
Yep.
back, and he said, "Listen, I didn't know about this. I didn't know her, but I'm going to get the word out." He sent an email out to everybody in the company.
Mhm.
He didn't have to do that.
He's so special.
Okay. But man, what a guy,
He
uh,
is.
he really, really, really got my attention,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean, we're talking about somebody who's
He's
incredibly busy, has a ton
remarkable.
of stuff going on, and he stopped, and he took the time to help. And I go to this, so he and I interact. The very next day, I go to an investor meeting in San
Mhm.
Diego, and there's a Compass agent there with a booth, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I've never met her before. I walk up, I introduce myself, and I said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you how impressed I am with your CEO." And she said, "Oh, we got that email this morning."
Yeah.
That
He's that man.
that's a big deal.
He's never missed a birthday call
Yeah.
for me. He consistently like checks in on agents one on one.
Yeah.
Not to mention like the fact that he's doing so many things to fight for the industry in general. But I always say, like, if there was any business that I was in, if there was a leader that I could follow, I would want to follow Robert
Yeah.
because and we were talking about one of your amazing guests earlier who grew up with absolutely nothing, single mom that raised them on nothing, and that was the case. Robert grew up with a single mom, in shared housing with his, sibling, and they had nothing, and he went on to do such incredible things,
Mhm.
and his mom now, I believe she's 70s. She's in a mastermind group that I'm in, and fortunate enough to be in. Ruth Refkin. She is like a firecracker, but she's still a producing real estate agent in Manhattan, and she's just full of life. And you can see where his good heart came from, because when something like that happens, he makes a conscious decision to do everything he can to rally support and love and resources around whatever tragedy has occurred. And I think, his one of our compass, I guess, founding sayings, I'm not thinking of the word, is collaborate without ego. And I think he's created a culture within that is more like a family. And I think that can get lost really easily when you think of the numbers and how big a company is getting. And something that I've been continually impressed with is the ability to foster environments where culture and community and relationship are at the forefront of the business. It's not how many deals can you get done. It's like, how can we make a positive impact on each of our communities?
Yeah.
And that is so beautiful. So
Yeah, and
I'm so happy to hear that. That's just warms my heart, and also doesn't surprise me about him.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Definitely a good
Yeah.
guy. So you decide to get into real estate, right? And
Yes.
you've been in real estate now 10 years, right? And you started speaking in public. You felt this calling, you felt this pull
Yeah.
to speak in public and give back. Talk about that for a second. What was it that occurred that sort of drew you to do that?
Yeah. So as as I have talked about, I was a professional athlete my whole life. So I was in peak physical condition. And that didn't stop when I stopped skiing. Like I continued to just, treat my body like I was a professional athlete, and I worked out hard and I ate well, and I really was the Energizer bunny. Like I could work 100 hours a day if it was possible, and still go to the gym and then socialize with, 4 different groups. It was never ending energy. And about a year and a half in, maybe 2 years into real estate, I had just really found my stride. I was like feeling like I was getting to the top of my game. Like I really had the hang of it. I could take on any transaction that came. I had really good business coming in. And I needed to have just a little touch up on a prior neck surgery. And I went in for surgery. Everything went great. The or like downtime was very minimal. But while I was recovering, I started to have all of these really weird symptoms that had never plagued me in the past. And that came in the form of, like, I had constant GI infections. So I was always sick to my stomach. I had chronic fatigue. Like I literally felt like my head was in a bubble that I was just so tired and foggy that I couldn't get out of. And then started to notice like how much my joints were hurting. So I was honestly really lucky. I went into one of my doctors, who's still one of my amazing doctors today, and explained to him what I was going through. And he said, I think we should test you for Lyme disease. And I looked at him and like he was a complete nut job. And I was like, I don't even know what Lyme is, like, let alone, like I've never seen a tick. I've never been bit by a tick. Like there's no way. So I really had it in my head that this was not even an option. I was healthy. I was an athlete, all of these things. And the test results came back and it was like, I had severe chronic Lyme disease and co-infections that are just as brutal as Lyme. And basically, Lyme disease waits until, at least chronic Lyme. So if you get bit by a tick and you see a tick bite, go to the doctor. They'll give you 3 weeks of doxycycline and you will not have to worry about it. But if you don't know that you were bit, it lies dormant in your system until something weakens your immune system. So
Mm.
you could go in for surgery, your immune system's weakened. Well, then it is such a smart, it's crazy how smart this disease is, honestly, because it attacks whatever you're genetically predisposed to.
Hmm.
And so it can show up as many different things in many different people. The shape of the cell is a screw. So it screws into your own cell and then creates a biofilm around the cell that makes it really difficult to treat because that biofilm is almost impenetrable. Sometimes I feel like I should get a PhD just for having Lyme disease because I've learned so much about medicine. But so for some people, it looks like rheumatoid arthritis. For some people, it can be, you know, psychiatric issues. For
Mhm.
some people, it can be GI issues. For me, it was autoimmune diseases. And unfortunately, like I have some autoimmune in my family, but it's been a recessive gene, and my parents have not had to battle it. But I unfortunately first got Hashimoto's, which is when your body attacks your thyroid. And then once you get one autoimmune disease, unfortunately, it kind of snowballs and you get multiple. So within a really short period of time, I went from being like at the top of my game in real estate to, I got a disease that basically attacks my nerve sheathing.
Mm.
So I'm in constant pain like 24/7. So I
Mm.
went from being like a very healthy young adult that was, Energizer bunny to barely being able to get off the couch
Mm.
and being in constant pain
Wow.
within just a couple of months. And throughout the last 8 years, as I look back on this journey, I have realized so many things about what adversity teaches us. And I realize, the stages of mourning that have to occur. I was very angry and very depressed and why is this happening to me? Like
Mhm.
my life is completely flipped upside down. I can barely get my work done, but I always had this guiding light. Like I always had this why. I loved what I did so much
Mhm.
that it was something that would get me out of bed in the morning when I didn't want to. Because quite frankly, it can be severe to the point where most people go on disability
Mhm.
and kind of check out. And I knew, from my past that if I wasn't engaged in something that I was passionate about and that I really could put my heart into and have impact, that I was gonna, really go downhill quickly. And I
Mhm.
think that makes you sicker. So throughout the hardest times in this journey, and I mean, I have stories that I could get into that are absolutely they're like sci-fi novels.
Mhm.
But I've recognized the like lifelong lessons that we gain through adversity. And it doesn't have to be chronic illness. It can be, going through difficult times in financially. I mean, the real estate market has not been a cakewalk the last 3 years. A lot of people are struggling. It could be a divorce, it could be whatever it is in your life. When you're in the throes of adversity,
Mhm.
it is so hard to look up at and realize, like, what am I learning through this? Because one of something my therapist therapy has helped a lot, but something my therapist told me was, there's no why for why bad things happen to good people.
Mhm.
Like that's just life, unfortunately. And talking about your dear friend that passed, there's no why. She didn't deserve that.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, it's part of our lives. But what we do have control of is the ability to choose how we want the adversity to form us.
Mhm.
So, do we want to let it make us jaded? Do we want to let it crumble us into oblivion and give up on everything and disassociate from our loved ones and our career and our friends? Or do we want to use it as an opportunity to grow and to learn more about ourselves? And I think that there's a very fine balance between, still giving yourself the space to feel and to mourn and to go through what you're going through.
Mhm.
And I absolutely despise toxic positivity. Like, I'm never going to be the person that says, just write positive affirmations over and over and everything's going to be great. It's like, no, you should find routines in your life that foster um giving you life and energy and that feeds you, but you should give yourself time to feel how you need to feel, but you
Mhm.
cannot allow yourself to get stuck in the mud. And if you can look around while you're going through hard times and even learning who your people are, like who's by your side, how are you asking them for help?
Mhm.
How are you expressing to people what you're going through? Like, how can you foster connection so that people can help you get through this?
Mhm.
Because you really find out who your people are when you're going through difficulty, and it's
Yeah.
hard. That's almost, a period of mourning in itself, is just realizing like all of the acquaintances that probably were social with quickly go away.
Mhm.
So it's really been a period of reinvention once again, and making sure that, yes, just because I am battling Lyme disease and, I'm getting a lot better, even just the fact that I'm able to do this, speak on podcasts and be near all of this electricity. I used to have such a bad sensitivity to electricity. It's
Mm.
called an electromagnetic frequency sensitivity. It's rare, but it's becoming more common.
Mm.
But I couldn't use a phone or computer without getting electrical burns all over my hands and chest that would bleed open. And if I didn't wear lead gloves, basically, but it got to the point where I couldn't even walk inside of like most houses.
Mm.
So I had someone else that had to show homes for me. I
Wow.
moved into an RV that wasn't attached to any electricity, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. And when I needed to write a contract, I would go gear up in like a lead blanket and lead gloves. So I've come a very long way, but like yesterday was my fourth day in a row of plasma transfusions, and
Mm.
I do that once a month. So it's an ongoing challenge and it's an ongoing kind of mental battle. But when I look back at everything that my coaches taught me about resilience and about grit and about showing up, I realized that those were the keys that I needed personally to help me get through this really difficult time and to make something beautiful out of it. And I
Mm.
think in order to make something beautiful out of it, it means helping other people that are going through similar things. Because when you get in the world of chronic illness, unfortunately, it can get very dismal.
Mhm.
I've been to a lot of support groups. You name it, I've tried it, but it tends to focus on, I understand people need to talk about what they're going through and how horrific it is, and because it truly is, and it's the
Mhm.
fastest growing epidemic in the country that no one talks about. So people need space to talk about it. But my goal is to help people understand how adversity can actually serve them. And it's taken me a long time to get to this place, and I still fall on my face and get up and learn something different all the time. But if I can even make one person's life a little bit better, then I am doing my job.
So in the speaking you're doing, you're telling your story
Yeah.
right? You're sharing, which has to be difficult,
You
right?
know,
Because you're
I
reliving it.
I'm a very, like I said, I'm a people person, and I also do not really have I don't mind being vulnerable.
Mhm.
And I don't know why that is, but I have no problem getting up and telling people what I've been through and getting really gritty about it and really, going in depth to let people know like how debilitatingly difficult this has been. But at the same time, I know that I wouldn't be the person that I am today had I not gone through this. And
Yeah.
it's, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it's also been what formed me into me.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I have a philosophy about this. I believe that the difficulties we go through in life, we're going through on purpose. And
Exactly.
it sounds a little off, but
No, I
basically
agree.
it's I feel like we're being prepared to come alongside somebody in the future that's going through something similar to what we're going through, so we can say, you know what, this is how I dealt with it, right?
Amen.
This is what I did to I focused on this, or this is, what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's like, it's, I feel like we're a vessel, and and that's what you're doing by speaking in public and letting people know this is the struggle, this is what
Yeah.
you went through, and this is what you learned from it,
Yeah.
right?
And here are
And
tactics and
yeah,
strategies
yeah,
like,
and by coming at it from a healthy place, you're
mhm,
allowing them to do the exact same thing, because it's really easy if you don't have people like you around you. It's
yeah,
really easy to get into this rut of feeling sorry for yourself, right?
extremely
And
easy.
yeah, and it's like, one of the things that I feel like we talked about mentorship,
Yeah,
that's a big deal. It's a big deal that it's important, I think, that if we can, that we step up and we share, right?
I
And
agree.
we give people the opportunity, because, it's absolutely true. So I just recently, in fact, a couple of days ago, I was hired by a local college to teach real estate.
Congrats.
I'm
That's
now a
so neat.
professional real estate teacher, right?
That's
Yeah. My
amazing.
daughter's like, I'm going to start calling you professor,
Yes.
right? But the thing about it is, we this all came from sharing. This all came from caring enough to say to people, look, it's rough, it's tough, it's difficult, it's all these things, but you can get there, right?
Yeah,
You can succeed at this. This can happen, right? And that's the kind of thing that I want people to understand. I want people to be inspired by what you're doing, and I want them to give back too. I want
yeah.
them to go talk. I mean, public speaking is the single most feared thing on the planet, more than death. People fear
Really?
people fear speaking in
Wow.
public more than they do dying. Okay?
Oh, I
Here's the
don't
thing
have
though.
that gene.
Well, here's the thing, and this is what I found to be the key, and I don't know that this is going to help anybody, but hopefully it will. Years ago, I had an opportunity to speak, and it
Mhm.
was literally 10 minutes before the speech had to happen, and I had no rehearsal. I knew the material.
Yeah,
I had heard it done before, but I had not rehearsed. I had no notes. I had nothing. Okay.
it sounds
And
like me.
10 minutes before this thing happens in front of this huge audience,
Mhm.
the person who normally does it gets violently ill and can't go on. And they look at me and they go, well, exactly, right? They look at me and they're like,
You're
hey, Mike,
like,
what? Right?
hi.
And I'm backstage, and I'm literally having what I would refer to as a panic attack, right?
Mental breakdown.
Yeah. And I'm like losing it, right? And all of a sudden I had this epiphany. And I think it was a God thing.
Mhm.
Like, all of a sudden I had this epiphany that if I cared more about those people that I was teaching than I did about how I looked doing it,
That's
Everything's going to be
beautiful.
fine,
That's
right? There's
beautiful.
no reason to be nervous.
Yeah.
Just go love on them, right? And so I literally got this calm that I cannot
I
describe.
I know what
Okay.
you're talking about,
I
and
got
I'll
this
tell you
calm,
why.
and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, here
Yeah.
we go. And I walked out on stage, and I know I fumbled and stumbled, and you're right. I know I did. I know for
But
a
you
fact I
did
did.
it.
But I went out there, and when I was done, the feedback they received was feedback they had never received before, ever. Like this, 85% of the people in this audience felt like they were my best friend.
Exactly. You're personable and
Yeah.
vulnerable.
But it was me
Yeah.
not standing on stage talking at them. It was me getting down off the stage in the audience amongst them and having a conversation with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do you need to learn today? For this
That's
to be
beautiful.
successful, what do you need to know?
Yeah.
When you walk away from here, if I'm successful today, what do we, right? And it
Yeah.
was different for a lot of people, but I connected with them, a few people in the audience, which meant I connected with everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what I feel like people need to understand or need to learn is when you're out and you're talking to people, you don't want to stand up in front of them and just read a script or
No.
do a slide deck or whatever. What you want to do is you want to get up in front of them. You want to go, hey, can I ask you a question?
Mhm. What do you wanna know?
Right? Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? What
Yeah.
is it exactly that you came here to learn today? Right?
Rocket
How can
science.
we succeed in what we're
Yeah.
doing today for you? And by the way, it only has to be a few people in the audience that you talk with, and everybody else is like, who's he talking to? Who is
Yeah.
that? Do I know that person? Are they telling
Well,
him what I would tell him?
and the ripples that it causes
Unbelievable.
too.
Unbelievable.
That you never one of my coaches tells me consistently. So I've kept, I always have a business coach and a real estate coach. Like, as coming from coaching, those are two invaluable tools that I always have in my arsenal, so to speak. And one of them said, you never know the day that you are going to either, one, do something that changes someone's life completely for the better, but it's like, how are you showing up in the world? Like, you never know if you're gonna change someone's life, and you never know if you're gonna meet the person that's gonna change your life. So how do you want to show up every day? And just that thought alone of, like, how our actions, how, asking that one question, how engaging with people can impact people so dramatically and so significantly that their entire life changes.
Have you ever stood in front of a group and you're teaching them something and somebody gets it?
Yes,
Like,
it's
you
the
see it in
best
their
thing
eyes.
ever.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's no way. Like, I met my new boss, the dean of the
Mhm.
business school at the college
Yeah.
here, right? I met him on Friday, and he said they tell me that you love teaching. I'm like, oh wow, I love is almost a weak term, right?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said I love, because what happened was they've been teaching online exclusively. And
Ah,
there's this drumbeat of
you
people
have
that
to have
want
the
in-person,
connection.
they want in-person trainings, right? And so the spot came up, and the person who's running the business department said, I've got the person. He used to come in and teach for us as a guest instructor for 15 years. And these people love him, right? And they called me and they said, hey, we want you to do this. And I'm like, okay, right?
Yeah.
And I was explaining to him, like, it's absolutely true that when the teacher's ready, or when the student's ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah.
And I
Man,
just can't
yes.
put a price tag on what that's like. It's like I would go
Uh-huh.
down there and I would speak to these classes, right? And
Mhm.
I'd teach a class, just one out of the semester, right? But every class they had, I would teach one class for each one in the
Oh,
semester,
wow.
right?
Okay.
So I'd go down and, I was down there for a couple hours, whatever.
Yeah.
And I would come away from it, and I was explaining this to him. I wouldn't even touch the ground driving home. It's an
Yeah.
hour plus to get home from there, right?
Mhm.
And I'd get home and
You're
there was no
floating.
sleeping that night.
No. Mm.
I was just too just
Yeah.
just completely energized and just you know what I mean?
Empowered, and it
Yeah,
makes you wanna do, you know,
yeah.
like, what else can I take on?
It's
And
incredible. I mean, and the feeling and I don't know how to explain it except that when I'm up in front of them and I'm teaching,
yeah.
I know that I'm doing what God designed me. It's like this podcast, right? This is
Mhm.
exactly what God designed me to
I
do,
feel the same way. Yeah,
you
it's
know?
clear that you were supposed to be here,
Yeah.
yes.
And so it's one of those things where it's hard to explain to people what that's like when
Yeah.
you know you're living your
It's
purpose.
flow.
Yeah.
It's flow,
Yeah.
and, you know, you made me remember something about that's really served me, and I hope can serve others as well. But when I was an athlete and I had these horrible nerves at the top of the run, I was really anxious. I had a coach that taught me that I had the power to change my anxious energy, my nervousness into excitement. And the way that I could do that was to get in a flow state by visualization. So
Mhm.
for skiing, I would sit at the top of the run, I'd close my eyes, and I knew that if I could land every trick in my head, if I could see myself going down the course, landing every trick, that I could land it in real life.
Mhm.
And that it created this belief in myself. Just, you know, taking 1 minute to close my eyes and visualize myself landing every trick perfectly. And I would do that even when I needed to learn a trick that I'd never tried before. I knew that if I could land it in my head, that I could land it on in real life.
Mhm.
And I've taken the same mentality and the same thing into not just real estate, but into, you know, my journey in healing. And I think the power of, you know, our brains don't really know the difference between what's actually happening and what we're visualizing.
Mhm.
So if we're creating neural pathways that say that, you know, we're visualizing ourselves getting the, you know, getting the listing or signing the agreement or getting a $10 million listing, whatever it is, or, you know, I visualize myself waking up and feeling full of energy and pain-free. Because if we're retraining our brains consistently that this is a possible reality and that this can be, you know, this is part of our reality, then it takes that anxious energy and it empowers you into an excitement to take on anything.
Yeah.
And I think that we can really use that tool for pretty much anything you're approaching in life that makes you feel maybe like not good enough or you can't do it or you have anxiety around it, whatever limiting beliefs are there. If you just picture yourself nailing whatever it is that you need to, it will like, the change in your demeanor, the change that you feel from within is what allows you to get in that flow state and go up there and kill it.
Mhm.
Whether it's as public speaking or working with a client or just getting through the day, you know? I like to talk a lot about, like, building your toolkit for getting through difficult times. It's like, what are the things that fill you up? What are the people that fill you up? For me, like I have a morning and evening routine of like writing out my gratitudes, writing out my goals in the present tense, reading, doing some meditation, going to the gym. Like these are things that I know that if I'm doing consistently, they feed my soul and they
Mhm.
make me a better version of myself. And they help me take my mind off of the fact that I don't feel good or that you know, the last thing I want to do is get up and get ready and go meet with people. It's like it helps distract you
Mhm.
from whatever negative thing you're living, and it helps you keep your eyes looking forward. And we all really do have to figure out what our toolkits are for when we are facing adversity, because when we face adversity with the right tools, we end up learning and growing more than we ever could have if everything was easy. Like, you don't look back at life and say like you learned so much or grew as a human when everything was going perfectly. No, it's when everything explodes and life is difficult that you learn the greatest lessons. But you can be, the driver of the lessons that you're going to learn based on how you're approaching things. And
Yeah.
I think that's a tool we can all use.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I cannot thank you enough for being our guest
Thank
on the Mike Litton
you.
Experience. This has been an absolute blast. I've loved every second of it.
I
Thank
have as
you.
well.
Thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me, and you're just a joy to speak with. It's a true honor, and I love listening. So thank you again.
Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.